saying a huge thank you. Oh, perfect. Yeah, I'd just like to start by saying a huge thank you for inviting us to speak to you today about our recent publication, which focuses on involving patients in lab-based research. So as Sadia said, my name is Adele Connor. I'm a third-year PhD student in UCD, and my research is focused on ovarian cancer. And on the call today, we also have Lorraine, Deirdre, Kat, Bridget, and Ingrid, who are all members of our patient advisory committee. So I just wanted to start off with an introduction to kind of how I got involved with public and patient involvement, or PPI as it's also known. So I applied for my PhD scholarship back in 2020, and I applied to the Irish Cancer Society. And on this application, there was a full section on how we plan to involve patient participants into our research project. And to be completely honest, I hadn't a clue where to start. I had never done PPI before, and I'd never really heard of PPI either. So I decided I'd reach out to the ovarian cancer charities. So I contacted people on Twitter, on Instagram, via email, and the one group that got back to me were OvaCare. So OvaCare are an ovarian cancer charity here in Ireland, and that's where I met the lovely Dr. Sharon O'Toole, who is the chair of the OvaCare and medical panel, and is also a ovarian cancer researcher based in Trinity College Dublin. So I explained to Sharon that what the project was about, and that I was applying for the Irish Cancer Society scholarship, and just asked if she knew of anyone that might be interested in getting involved. And that's when Sharon invited me to the OvaCare coffee and chat morning. So these mornings happen once a month on a Saturday morning online, and it's just any member of the OvaCare community can join in to a call to have chats and discussions just with people who understand what they've been through, so can understand how they're feeling. So I was very kindly offered to present my research at this meeting, and I was able to present my research and get feedback on this. But importantly, I was able to present my plan for involving patients in the research project and get feedback on this as well. So luckily, I was successful in securing this PhD funding, and I began my PhD in January 2021, and that's when we established our patient advisory committee. So we had our first meeting over Zoom as we were still kind of in the height of COVID. And this was really an introductory meeting whereby I was able to introduce myself a little bit better and the project a bit better. And the committee members were able to introduce themselves a bit better as well. So to give me kind of a guide of how what their experience was like from diagnosis to treatment. And we were able to have a chat then about how we plan to embed that experience into the research project. So this was also when we decided to write up our terms of reference documents. So I was able to draft these documents, send it on to the committee members, and then get feedback from them. And these documents really just outlined what it meant for both the patient participant and for the researcher to be involved with this committee. It outlined kind of the time commitments that might be expected, but most importantly, I highlighted that involvement is completely voluntary, and that if they didn't want to be involved at any point, that was completely fine, and that they still were able to jump back in at a time that suited them. So I'd just actually like to hand over now to Bridget Carr, who was one of the first members of this committee, so that we can hear about this stage of the project from her perspective. So Bridget, if you're there, if you want to join in.
Yeah, thanks very much, Adele. So this was my first introduction to PPI involvement. To be honest, I didn't really know what PPI meant or what it was about. At first, I was kind of nervous, but excited to see where this experience would take me. Why did I get involved? From the first day I heard Adele speak at our OvaCare support meeting, it was clear to see she was truly interested in what we had to say. She could be seen frantically taking notes, trying to take it all down. I knew from that day that our story of our lived experience of ovarian cancer was worth sharing, and that some good come out of such a traumatic time in our lives. Why our involvement works. Our involvement works firstly because from listening to our experience with treatment, it has helped Adele and other researchers shape their research projects. We all work as part of a team, and everyone learns from each other. I always have the saying, nothing about us without us. Was it a positive experience? Yes. Getting involved with Adele, Claire, Leah, and Antoinette in UCD has been such a positive experience for me, and it has encouraged me to get involved in many other PPI projects and committees. when PPI is done right, it works so well. I always compare any new involvement to this project because I've seen how it works and when it works well. And I will always red flag something if I see it's not being done right. From the very start, we were included, and it showed how Adele truly wanted PPI to be embedded in her research project. And my last point is never left behind. Not once were we ever left behind in this project. We were always consulted in decisions. Adele could have written this paper by herself, but again, she gave us this opportunity and honour to be part of the project. And for that, we are truly thankful. And that's what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bridget. That's so nice to hear. So thank you. I just want to go on now to kind of introduce what my project is about so that you can understand then how we embedded the patient experience into that research. So as when a patient has ovarian cancer, one of the first treatments they'll undergo is surgery to have all of the tumours removed. So I then go to the hospital and I can collect these tumours, and from here I can dissect them then into mini tumours. We can then keep them growing in the lab for around 48 hours, and then we can also treat them with different combinations of therapies then as well. At this stage then I need to add on my antibodies or my paint. So what that means is if you imagine you've got like a paint by numbers picture in front of you, you know that there's a picture hidden inside there somewhere, but you can't quite see what it is yet until you've added on some colours or paints. That's similar to how I can work with the tumours in the lab. So I know I'm working with the tumour sample, but I don't know what's going on inside that tumour until I've added on colours or paints. And the paints that we work with in the lab are known as antibodies, and that's similar to what they look like there in that picture. So once I've added on these antibodies, I can then use the microscope to look at the tumours. Then I can begin to analyse my results, so to understand what drugs worked and what drugs haven't worked. And with the idea being that we can then report these results back to the clinician to hopefully develop a personalised treatment plan for patients. So the big question that I had was really around this fourth step here. So I wanted to know, well, what drugs should I use? So my original experimental plan was that I wanted to test chemotherapy. So this was the standard of care for ovarian cancer. I was also interested in looking at immunotherapy, so specifically focused on a type of immunotherapy known as immune checkpoint inhibitors, because these have shown really great success in other cancer types, but so far have not been successful in ovarian cancer, and I wanted to understand why. And lastly, then I was interested in PARP inhibitors. So PARP inhibitors are targeted therapy that have had some success in ovarian cancer in recent years, but there are a number of different PARP inhibitors available. And I wanted to understand, well, is there a benefit of using one over the other, or can I just pick one and bring that forward for the experiments? So for this, we can obviously consult the clinical trials, we can speak to the clinicians, we can read the literature, read the publications, but we can also speak to the patients themselves who are actually the people that are on these drugs. And that's exactly what I did. So I turned to my committee members, and that's when we decided to set up our first in-person meeting. So this day began with an initial meet and greet. So our committee has now grown from 2 members to 5. So not everybody knew each other at this stage. So it was a nice kind of way to start the day so everyone could get to know each other a little bit before the meeting started. We then had a lab tour. So I was able to show the committee members around the research lab and let them kind of see how a cancer research lab works. I was also able to show them ovarian cancer cells under the microscope, which I think everyone found really interesting. And lastly, then we had a group discussion. So I started this discussion with a very short, about a 5-minute presentation from me highlighting kind of what my project was about and what I was hoping to achieve. And then I finished the talk with this slide. So I asked, would you be able to discuss the treatment that you're on or that you were previously on? How was your treatment plan created? Would you be able to discuss your side effects if you had any? And what is the perspective of the current treatment that you're on? And I think by putting up this very specific questions really helped to guide the discussion and made sure that the patient involvement had the most impact. So out of this meeting then, we managed to develop a revised patient-informed experimental plan. So we decided to include a range of PARP inhibitors. as a direct result of speaking to the patients. So as I've already mentioned, we knew we wanted to look at chemotherapy as its standard of care for ovarian cancer. We were interested in immunotherapy, and specifically the immune checkpoint inhibitors mentioned there, as studies have shown that they're prevalent in ovarian cancer. But it was really these PARP inhibitors that I wasn't sure about. So I naively assumed that as a targeted therapy, that there would be a lot less side effects, and I could just pick one of the available ones on the market and I could bring that forward. But from speaking to the patients, I've understood that they actually have a lot of side effects that I was not aware of. And the PARP inhibitors themselves actually have varying levels of toxicities. So we decided then that by testing a range of these PARP inhibitors, instead of focusing on just one, that this could provide more options for patients. So I just wanted to highlight as well some of the benefits kind of I think researchers can have from involving patients in their research project. So there's a re-energized motivation for your work with the reminder of why we do this research. Like, I know I definitely walked out of that meeting that day completely energized and motivated to get straight back into the lab and get carried on with my project. The research is focused on the unmet needs of patients. So as scientists, we can sometimes assume we know what the unmet needs of patients are, but until we've actually spoken to patients, we really don't know. There is a greater understanding of the lived experience, which can only serve to make us better scientists and better researchers. And the questions that you may never have considered or thought of can be incorporated. You need to remember that patients are coming at this from a completely different perspective. And there is just, it ignites a passion to help in any way that you can. So whether this is fundraising events or awareness raising. So I just want to now pass over to Deirdre, who actually joined this committee during this second stage, so that we can hear about this from her perspective. So Deirdre, if you're there, if you want to join in. Deirdre, I think you're on mute, if you want to just unmute yourself.
Sorry about that.
There you go. Yeah.
Good morning. I was informed about PPI by other patients, namely Kat, who sent out an email about Adele's research and asked if any of us were looking to get involved. So it was through her that I actually got involved. I was quite apprehensive about it initially because I'd been diagnosed and treated during COVID. So I hadn't had an awful lot of interaction with patients or other people about ovarian cancer. So I said I would go once and see what it was like. And if it wasn't for me, well, I didn't have to go again. And then I was also very interested in the research that Adele was doing, because I knew she was interested in PARP inhibitors. And because I was diagnosed with the BRCA1 somatic mutation, I'd been put on PARP inhibitors for 2 years. So I knew that I could kind of give her feedback on how things were going. It turned out to be a really, really positive experience. I got to meet loads of other patients, and we've kind of set up our own little network. And yeah, it was just really good. So I think next slide. I would encourage anybody to get involved. It's great to be able to give your feedback and your ideas into how the treatment for the disease that we all have is going to go forward. It's great to understand the science behind the treatment as well. And I think our involvement helps to focus researchers like Adele on their project. And it's great to get so much feedback from her on how things are moving forward as well. Thank you.
That's great, Deirdre. Thank you so much. So lastly then, I kind of wanted to just talk through some of the other PPI initiatives that we've been involved in since this. So we have recently set up this project called Broadening Patient Involvement in Ovarian Cancer Research. So we applied again to the Irish Cancer Society for their Public and Patient Involvement Award in 2022. And luckily we were successful in securing this funding. And this funding call had a focus on equality, diversity and inclusion. So we've decided to engage the Bangladeshi community because a PI in our group, Dr. Arman Rahman, actually had great success with engaging this community in his Invisible Spectrum events. So these events focus on engaging minority communities in science and cancer research. So Arman is actually from Bangladesh himself, so has a lot of contacts with the Bangladeshi community here in Ireland and was able to provide translations for us. So the co-authors on this application were 4 PhD researchers, so all focused on ovarian cancer, 3 patient participants who are all members of this patient advisory committee, and then 1 supervisor, so our PhD supervisor, Antoinette Perry. So there's a picture there in the corner of just the research group, but we need to, I think, get together and I'll get a picture of all of us together. We've not managed to do that yet. But we had our first kickoff meeting for this project in March 2023. We knew our plan for the project, but we kind of needed to get together to discuss how we were going to implement that. So we decided we would design a video to encourage involvement from new members. And then once we had engaged some new members, we would then host 2 workshops in UCD. So similar to the workshop that we hosted earlier that I discussed. So we have successfully managed to create these videos. So that's just screenshots of them there. So we've released the video in both English and in Bengali, and they're available on YouTube if anyone wants to have a look. You just need to type in the title of the video that you can see there. And we have since also had our first workshop. So again, we started this workshop off with a meet and greet over teas, coffees, biscuits, just for everyone to kind of get to know each other a little bit. And we did this in 2 separate rooms. So we had a Zoom room or an online room and then an in-person room. So this was important so that anybody who wasn't able to travel for the day was still able to be a part of it. And we decided to have it in 2 different rooms because we found sometimes that an online discussion mixed with an in-person discussion kind of sometimes be a bit fractured. So we wanted to just make sure that we had the best discussion possible. So we had 2 rooms. There was a different presentation going on in each room. And then we switched so that everybody was able to attend both presentations. But similarly, if someone only wanted to go to one, they could just do that as well. And they didn't have to go to the rest of the day. We also had a lab tour. So again, I was able to show the groups around the cancer research labs. And importantly, we brought our phone with us for this tour so that the people who were on the online call or the Zoom call were still able to come down to the lab, get a look at around and see what was going on. And they still felt part of the day and they weren't missing out just because they hadn't been there in person. And then we finished this day with a lunch. So we all got together and we were able to have a chat and get to know each other kind of outside the confines of researcher and patient, which I just think was a really lovely way to finish the day. And then, as I mentioned, that I think speaking to and engaging patients only ignites a passion in you to help in any way that you possibly can. So that's what we've done here as well. We've hopefully we've created these beat stickers. So these just highlight the symptoms of ovarian cancer, and we handed these out on World Ovarian Cancer Day on Grafton Street, which is Dublin's main shopping street, just to hand them out so to kind of get people talking about the symptoms and make people aware. And we also contacted the Press Up group, which own a number of restaurants in Dublin. So we asked them if we could place our stickers on their period product boxes in their bathrooms, which they've let us do, which has been fantastic as well. We have also been involved in the Dipper Dance campaign for World Gynecological Oncology Day, again, just raising awareness of the gynae symptoms and get women talking, because I really don't think it's probably done enough. And we've managed to have national coverage with this, which is fantastic. So you can see that we've managed to make it into the national newspapers, and Deirdre actually organised that swim there that's in the middle and I think on the right as well. So it's been a fantastic team effort. And lastly, then, we've been involved with this Vitruvian painting with the artist Vincent Devine. So Vincent has created a painting which incorporates all aspects of cancer research. So from the molecular level to the cell level to tissue level to whole body level. And he has recently created derivative paintings from this, where he has now also incorporated the patient experience. And those paintings are actually being revealed this evening at an exhibition, which Deirdre, I think, is at. So that's been a really lovely event to be a part of and something a little bit different. So just wanted to finish with saying thank you so much for inviting us here to speak to you. It's been a real honour to come and talk about our paper. So we're more than happy to answer any questions anyone may have.